Hello, my name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and welcome to the Big Discussions YouTube channel. Big Discussions is the video arm / component of the Big Words blog site, of which I am the creator. Go to www.bigwordsarepowerful.com. Again, that's www.bigwordsarepowerful.com. I guess you could say this is history in the making because this is my first time being a YouTube content creator. I've been working at this for a while, trying to get the formula just right, and I think that I finally got it, and I hope that this is enjoyable for you and that you come back and that you like, share, and subscribe and share this with other people who can benefit from it. So this is new, and it's something that's going to continue to evolve as time goes on. I have a bunch of things I want to say in this initial vlogcast, but I'm going to start with an introduction of myself so you know who I am and where I'm coming from. I'm a native of Buffalo, New York, specifically the East Side. I'm a graduate of Hutch Tech High School. I have a general biology degree, a bachelor's, from Johnson C. Smith University, or JCSU, as you can see on the wall behind me there. I have a PhD from the University of Michigan, as you can see also on the wall behind me, the flag with the signature maize and blue block M. And I also have 2.5 years of additional postdoctoral training in toxicology. And this has allowed me to start a career as a regulatory scientist, which I plan to discuss in further detail in subsequent video content. I've actually written about it on my blog. So I consider myself a scientist / writer, and I'm going to talk to you shortly about how I became a writer and how I started writing. But I first want to acknowledge a few people. I want to acknowledge the creator, whatever that is or isn't for you. I want to acknowledge my mother, who raised both myself and my brother in a house full of love and who very much encouraged education. I want to acknowledge my father, who also encouraged education, and despite the fact that he and my mother split at an early age, he always tried to be visible and present, or should I say as visible and as present as possible, which is something that his father, my grandfather, encouraged him to do, which was to always make sure your children know who you are. In addition to being accessible, Dad was also always very generous with us on our birthdays and over the holidays. He's a retired educator, and so one thing I'm going to tell you about later on is about a gift that he gave me, which I think is arguably more valuable than any of the monetary gifts that he has ever given us. I want to acknowledge my older brother Amal, who I think is the greatest older sibling that a younger sibling could have. Early on, he was always very protective of me and also very generous as well. I believe that he's partially responsible for my career path because I followed him to Hutch Tech High School. I want to point out that my brother is very talented in the visual arts, and he always has been. If you go to the Big Words blog site and you look at the artwork there in terms of the logos and the other associated art pieces, he designed those. So he's always been very talented in the visual arts. He's also a design and build guy. He's always been very talented with his hands and with tools in terms of taking things apart, putting things together. And he's also created a number of new and novel gadgets and inventions, some of which I will write about and some of which we will talk about here via this video content. I want to acknowledge a mentor. I have several, but I want to acknowledge this one who I feel like I met by chance a couple years ago. he took an interest in me and adopted me into his group of proteges, and he's taught me a lot about success and failure, about money, and also he's done a lot towards filling in many of the gaps that were there around the time I turned 30, in terms of being a man and understanding how to grind and how to succeed and how to fight in terms of achievement, in terms of just being a man in this world. So I want to acknowledge him. And he's also been very valuable in terms of me growing my blog, me launching my blog, and now me launching this video content. So all four of these people have been very, very valuable, and I just wanted to acknowledge them before I dove in. So now I'm going to talk to you about where the Big Words blog site came from and how I started writing. So even though I'm formally trained in a STEM, one of the things I've always also wanted to do was to be a writer. And at an early age, my father actually told me that, you know, son, you have a talent for writing. So once I established my current career and I started working what I consider regular hours, I got involved in a bunch of community service activities. I started mentoring, but I also asked myself, okay, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And you know, what else do I want to do? And my thought went back to some of the writing projects that I always wanted to work on and that I secretly envisioned in my mind. So I didn't want to just work on these projects and just present them to the world and say, hey, I've written books. I thought it would be necessary to get my feet wet, build an audience, and show that I had written something before presenting these things to the world. So right around 2012, a friend at the time recommended that I write for Examiner.com, which no longer exists. And so I applied to the Examiner, and over the next 4 to 5 years gained a lot of valuable experience creating online content. I also contributed a little bit to Dr. Matthew Lynch's Advocate, which is an educational periodical. So if you're interested in education, that would be a very valuable source for you to read. But Examiner shut its doors around 2016 in the summertime, and so I had to decide whether or not I wanted to keep writing, if I wanted to keep building my audience, and if I wanted to keep that going. And the answer is yes, I did. So what I did was I went ahead and purchased a copy of Blogging for Dummies, and I figured out what exactly a blog was, and I figured out how to set one up, and I started the Big Words blog site in November of 2016. So in addition to having some writing projects that I've always wanted to work on and finally bring to fruition, there were some messages that I wanted to get out there personally that I thought would help others out, particularly others like myself. So I get the question a lot, who's your core audience? I get this question when I tell people that I'm a blogger and I'm a writer. So I get the question, who's your core audience, or who is your audience? It's a question that stumped me initially, but the more I thought about it, I realized that my core audience is kids like me and adults like me. So kids who are unaware of the sciences, kids who may have an interest in the sciences but don't know what else they could do with it, or don't know what else they could be besides going to medical school. Also adults who don't know a lot about financial literacy. I didn't find out about the law of compounding interest or what a net worth was until much later in life. And I'll tell you what, at this year's Johnson C. Smith University homecoming, I met a woman who was in her mid-50s, and she told me that she just learned about the rule of 72, which is a component of the law of compounding interest. So there are a lot of people walking around, particularly from my background, who don't know what these things are, and that's important because these things drive your decisions, and they drive your decision making, and they have larger societal implications. So that's my core audience. I'll tell you another quick story. This year, during this year's painful Michigan-Ohio State game, I had an important discussion with a cousin. So during the second half of that game when my team was getting blown out, two cousins walked in. one from my mom's generation, and then the other who was slightly younger than me. And me and this cousin never knew what I trained in school and what I do now in terms of career. So I told her I trained in the sciences and that I'm a regulatory scientist now. And she literally said, huh, I have a cousin who's a scientist. This is important because I get this a lot when I talk to other black people, both educated circles and non-educated circles. And the reason for this is because there just aren't a lot of us in terms of black STEM professionals. And it's been published that less than 10% of STEM degree holders are black. So I think that we need to do a better job of being more visible. You're seeing that now with a lot of STEM career fairs and going to STEM professionals going to grade schools, and you're seeing STEAM now, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. But I think it's important for us to be as visible as possible and to tell our stories. What are these skill sets? How do we get these skill sets? What are the challenges in training in these fields? And what happens once you get your degree and try to start your career somewhere. So that's important. Overall, in a general sense, I think in terms of education, we in the black community need to do a better job of getting the message out there that education is cool and education is good. In my interview with Hill Harper, one of the things Hill said was, education is the new sexy, education is the new cool. And that's actually debatable, but in our community, but I think we need to do a better job of getting that message out there. So that's how I started writing. Those are some of my core messages. And while many of my core messages are universal, and there'll be something there for everyone, many of my stories will be rooted in the experiences of a black man from Buffalo's East Side. So that's how I started creating written content. So how did I start creating video content, or why did I start creating video content? Well, let's go back to Blogging for Dummies. Blogging for Dummies recommended that once you got further enough along in terms of starting your written content, that you start creating video content as well to complement what you've written. So what we know and what I've experienced is that the truth is that a lot of people, even now in 2018, don't read. So as a writer, you can write until you're blue in the face, but many people will not get your content or your messages because it's written. And presenting things via video is actually another good way to get your messages out there and to continue to build your audience. So that's why I am now stepping up into this medium. I've been watching YouTube content creators. I've been watching a lot of other YouTube content creators over the last couple of years, and I have a lot of inspirations, and I'm a fan of many of them. I'm going to keep them anonymous for now. Maybe I'll divulge who some of them are later on, but for now I'm going to keep them anonymous. I'm not here to compete with any of them, but instead I think I have some unique messages that I would like to get out there myself. So now for this last part of this introductory vlogcast, I'm going to talk about what some of my core messages are and where the name Big Words actually comes from. So if you go to the front page of my blog, you'll see that the first item on the headline is creating ecosystems of success. And this is something that I admittedly got from the mentor I told you about a few minutes ago. He and I regularly talk about success and failure, what makes successful people successful, and what makes less successful people less successful. And so simply put, creating ecosystems of success means creating environments where others can be successful. For me, that means really breaking down the how. So if you look at a lot of my content, I lead with this principle, and I'm always trying to get to the how. I'm always trying to distill out the how. How did you win those basketball titles? How did you become a millionaire? How did you start that business? How did you earn your medical degree? So the how is very important to me, and that's the significance of creating ecosystems of success. So I actually have a page with all the principles listed out. This mentor encouraged me to start that page, something I'm very grateful for. I showed him some of my earlier writings, and he told me, I have no idea what these writings are grounded in or what you're grounded in. So that's why I started that page, and that's where these principles come from. So success is relative to the individual, and it varies from person to person. But for me, big words has been, or should I say, the use of big words has been critical to my success as a STEM professional, and now as a blogger and a content creator. So where does the name Big Words come from? Well, it comes from my home city of Buffalo, New York, and it comes from the Campus West College Learning Laboratory, which is on the campus of Buffalo State College, or Buff State, which is my mother's alma mater, and those of you from Buffalo know where that is and why that's important. So right around middle school, I started to get the question, I think my brother got it too, and this story isn't unique to us, but I started to get the question, Anwar, why do you use those big words all the time? I didn't understand what my classmates were asking me or why they were asking me that, but as I got older, I started to realize, okay, education, even though education was encouraged in our home, it wasn't necessarily encouraged in the other homes. So there was an abundance of books in the house, encyclopedias, dictionaries, magazines, you name it, we had it. And I was a very curious kid, so those books weren't just sitting there. I was reading them, and I was reading about the presidents of the United States. I was reading about world history. I was reading about world wars. I was reading about all that stuff and soaking it up. And so when you start to read, your vocabulary organically expands, and you start organically speaking those words. And so it occurred to me that it wasn't that way for my classmates, and so I stood out to them. That was also my first time experiencing that there are different interpretations of what black is. And so I'm certain this happens in other walks of life, but in the black community, we form opinions on one another based upon how we walk, how we talk, how we speak, how we articulate, and how we carry ourselves. And the use of big words will cause some of your peers and other individuals to form opinions about you in your blackness. This is something that happens, again, in both educated and non-educated circles, and it's something that's continued well into adulthood, which is something I will revisit later on because it's something that I find very fascinating. So that's the significance of the name Big Words. That's where it comes from. I was conflicted about using that as the title for my blog initially because I wasn't sure if people would take it seriously and if it would sound kind of childish. But when I thought about it, it just fit because it's a core experience, and the name is a part of me, and it's one of my most vivid childhood experiences. So I'm going to close now with by discussing some of the content you'll find on the Big Words blog site, and again, what my core messages are. So the Big Words blog site is going to have an educational focus. So you'll find content about general education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, financial literacy, and money, which is something I got a late start in life, and which is something I'm very passionate about. You'll find some personal stories, and you'll also find an abundance of guest and contributed posts, or should I say contributed content. And I'm getting a lot of that now. One of the things that Blogging for Dummies also says is that blogging is about building communities. And so if you're seeing this, or if you've read some of my content and you think there's the potential for us to collaborate, please reach out to me at anwar@bigwordsarepowerful.com. Again, that's anwar@bigwordsarepowerful.com. And if there's the potential for us to collaborate, I say, let's do it. I think this is also a good place for me to say that I will make a deliberate effort at this point, at least early on, to stay out of political talk based upon how toxic things are right now. So I will make a strong effort to stay in my little sandbox unless I am invited on someone else's panel. What I will do is perhaps allude to or ask the reader what the larger implications are of some of the things that I write. So what are the consequences of not being trained in a STEM right now? What are the consequences of not knowing what a net worth is? What are the consequences of not knowing about the law of compounding interest? So you'll probably see me do that. And with that, I will conclude this introductory vlogcast to Big Discussions. Please please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Please visit the Big Words blog site at www.bigwordsarepowerful.com. Again, that's www.bigwordsarepowerful.com. Please subscribe and or copy the link to my RSS feed into your feed reader. There is a Big Words blog site Facebook page. You can follow me on Twitter using the handle @BigWordsArePowerful. And you can follow me on Instagram using the handle @NYUSF76. So I think that covers all the bases. And thank you for watching this initial vlogcast. Please come back. More are on the way. And until then, thank you for watching and take care. Bye-bye.